Nicola Lomas. I'm with FESTIVE Road, the consultancy on a mission to create better travel and meetings management. Today I am here talking to Lee Whiting from GSA, and we're going to be talking about travel risk management. So Lee, lots of people get very excited about travel risk management, and I think it's fair to say that you and I are two of them. So what should we be talking about today?
Well, I think people that get excited about travel risk management maybe need to get out more. Very importantly, there was a new standard issued last week by the International Standards Organization, ISO 31030, which doesn't exactly trip off the tongue, but it's a risk management framework for travel managers, and I think it's going to be potentially one of the most talked about topics in travel in the next sort of year to 18 months.
Okay, and do you think it's a talked about topic because suddenly there's a standard behind it which is making us focus the mind, or is it because there is more risk within our travelling world?
I think it's a bit of each, actually. I mean, this document's been worked on for about 6 to 7 years, so it's been a long time coming to fruition. It's now finally released. So I think that helps to bring together a lot of different strands that were out there. But then I think secondly, the pandemic has given rise to another couple of additional risks, such as security at hotels. For once, we've read a lot about hospitality staff leaving the industry during the pandemic and trouble attracting them back, and that's affecting the security industry. Security guards, doormen, that kind of thing. So there are some corporates out there that are worried about the fact that hotels may be less secure now than they would have been before the pandemic. So I think those things are coming together. Okay,
so in the round as a travel manager, we've got lots of things to worry about. And then if we move over into the travel risk management element of it, what is it about the standards that could help a travel manager if they're looking today and saying, oh, I've just heard Lee talk about a new standard, I think that sounds important. What would you advise them to do first?
Yeah, I think it's a great tool for the travel managers, if you like, and it gives them a framework to operate to help to make sure that they're mitigating the risks within their travel policy. I think historically it's an area where corporates have struggled to gain commitment and investment from senior management, it's been seen as just do enough, just do enough to cover your backside and make sure you get away with it. And this won't allow you to do that. Yeah. You need to do so much more. So certainly one big positive will be that they've got a document they can take to their senior management and say, we need to take this seriously, because if we don't, it's actually the senior management within the business that are on the hook for duty of care, not the operator.
And just from a technical perspective, the standards, the ISO standards, these are things that companies would typically be checking off within their compliance register, within their own company. So this is one that at the moment is it's the first step to becoming a required standard.
Yes. Yeah, correct. So for the first year or two, they tend to be kind of almost like a soft launch and not be certifiable. But then after that period, they will become certifiable, which means you could have a standard and you could issue it and say that we adhere to that standard. But I think there's a concern that even in that first 2-year period, if unfortunately you have an issue or something goes wrong, and it was covered by the standard and you knew of its existence, whether you were adhering to the standard or not, the fact that it was there and you could have referred to it could go against you in a court.
Or maybe it could help you, right?
Absolutely.
If you're saying, actually, we are working towards this.
Absolutely, definitely. Yeah, that's a really good point. It could be a positive thing that if there's an incident, you can point to it and say, well, we adhered to this. We did everything we did it. We took all reasonable steps to ensure that your journey was safe and secure.
Yeah. And on talking of a journey and talking of even the standard as a journey, let's say I'm a travel manager looking at this and thinking, oh no, is it a tick box exercise, or are there things in there that actually a travel manager could look at and say, this might help me signpost to different stakeholder engagements to bring other elements within the travel program? Because post-COVID, as travellers start getting back out onto the road, I think it's safe to say that most of them want to know that their companies have some duty and some care around them. Not just because it's the right thing to do, but because travellers want it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. You're right. And I think it will give travel managers a suite of tools that they can use. You mentioned about stakeholders, absolutely. For larger corporates where they have they have those separate teams. They can bring in their risk, their security teams, health and safety, HR. They'll all need to be inputting into this because it affects all of those areas. I think we've seen during the pandemic that the travel teams and the risk teams and the health and safety teams have drawn closer together, which is a positive thing. And I think this will be a continuation of that.
That's great. So, and we've both touched on risk in our career. Certainly, I've had a pretty deep dive into it. In your previous roles, you have been sitting there with the responsibility for many travelers going around the globe. What are some of the things that you think that a travel manager could look at this, or a supplier or a buyer, be looking at the standards? Would it help them to look at their program in a new way, and also their suppliers?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's something in it for everybody, and that sounds a bit of a cliche, but you know, as a supplier, you can look to see what you need to do to make sure that you are compliant to it. So, you know, certainly the corporate clients that I'm talking to today, I'd say on average they're talking about their 2021 spend or 2022 spend, being roughly 50% of their 2019 spend. So those suppliers are going to be fighting for a much smaller. There's a much smaller pool of business for them to be fighting for. And why would they not want to do everything they can to make them more attractive? So suppliers can look at the standard and say, well, what can I do to make sure I'm compliant to the standard so I come to the top of that list in terms of selection? At a travel manager or a corporate level, you've got that tool, like I said, that toolkit to look at. And what do we need to do to make sure we've done everything we can to eradicate as much risk as reasonable and as possible from our travel policy? So there's both sides need to look at this and get behind it and understand what it means.
So I think what I'm hearing you say is that travel risk has always been an issue for us, whether you're in the buying or the supplying side of travel management. And this is a standard that can help be used as a tool to tighten up things that are happening within a travel department.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right now.
As I said, it enables you to go back to the business and try and get some kind of investment, whereas before it would have been done a bit of a seat of the pants operation. Now it's going to be something that's far more formal because there is a proper risk attached to travel risk, if you like. And you can now talk to the business about it and make sure they're behind you and supporting you in that.
And it's a standard, but is it complicated? I mean, is this something that a travel manager is going to go, oh, it's really complicated, it's hard, it's too big, I've got all of these other things, I've got my risk company is telling me I don't need it, my TMC is telling me I don't need it. Well, not that they would say they don't need it, but you know what it is.
Yeah, no, I think in my opinion, it's probably a bit big, but that's because I have a very short attention span. But a lot of it is common sense. A lot of it is things that we know we should do, but we just don't do them. And this kind of puts it in black and white, and therefore you know you can't hide behind it anymore. You know you need to see it through and follow what it's saying. So I think it helps from that perspective. And
many tools within travel risk management have value beyond the core of looking after people, right? So we were talking earlier, and you mentioned even helping a travel manager pull in leakage from a program. Talk to me a little bit about that. What did you mean by that?
So you know, the standard basically says that you're responsible for a traveller from the minute they leave their home until the minute they get back to their home at the end of that trip, whether it's a day or a week or a month or whatever it may be. Now, most corporates will have a defined route to market, a route you must follow to book your trip. But as we all know, some individuals may not prefer that route and might go their own way. Even if they've gone and booked something online themselves, if they're traveling on behalf of the business and the business are paying, you still have that duty of care regardless of the route they've taken. So it becomes even more important for corporates to clamp down on leakage. And you know, in my experience as a travel manager, if you try to explain to those people that go direct why it's wrong, it goes in one ear and out the other. But if you can now point to the standard and say, well, this is why it's important, you are putting the company at risk by doing that, I think, again, that will help to enforce that message.
So is the standard, and we don't really want to talk too much about the standard because it's about overall travel risk management, but is your view that knowing where the travellers are or knowing how they're booking and about the trip is the most important thing, or is it the mechanism of the booking, how they're booking and aggregating all of the data? Which is it that you think is most important?
I think it's a bit of a combination. I mean, obviously, knowing where your travellers are at any point in their journey is absolutely vital and critical, and whether they went ahead with the trip and everything else. So that's really, really important, and being able to aggregate that data. But it's kind of earlier than that. And I think, again, because of the pandemic, we'll see approval processes will have changed, and more and more travel will now be about what bang am I getting for my buck? You know, most travel will be
the value, right?
The value, absolutely, the value of that trip. And so the approval process will change, and I think that will help. because making sure that people are traveling for the right reason. And actually, is that person fit to travel? That's something we've not done enough of in the past. Are they fit physically? And maybe at the moment, are they fit mentally? You know, if they haven't traveled for a year and a half or 2 years, they may get out of practice. They might be nervous about what's happening around the world with vaccinations and so on and so forth. And so the company has a duty to, even before the traveller has travelled, is should that traveller be travelling? Are they in the right place and in the right state of mind to take that trip?
I think the permissible travel framework actually talks a little bit about that as well before we go into the purposeful travel, which is exactly what you're talking about, getting the value. Why are you doing this trip?
Correct.
What's the value?
100%.
Not just for the company, but for you as an individual.
Yes.
Right, and are you looked after on the whole journey? So Lee, within the standard, as I understand it, there are bits of the journey like the air, the rail, the journey, ground journey perhaps, that are not specifically called out, but actually the accommodation and the duty of care that companies have to make sure that the accommodation element is specifically outlined. And there are a number of reasons for that, which could be, you tell me actually.
Yeah, sure. I think accommodation, the reason it's pulled out is potentially because it's seen as one of the higher risk areas. You know, when you travel by air, you know you're going to be using your passport, the security checks are there, you know you go for a scanner. A lot of that doesn't happen when you go into a hotel. So I think it's seen as a higher risk. One of the big call outs is that obviously the hotel chains do a lot of work around safety and security themselves, but what the standard says, which is really important, putting in layman's terms, is you can no longer rely on a hotel marking its own homework. So the fact that the hotel tells you that it's safe and secure is all well and good, but the standard says what you need to do is either evaluate that for yourself or find someone else to evaluate it on your behalf. So that's a really, really core, call out.
It's really key, really key. Okay, great, thank you. Thank you very much, Lee, for
Pleasure.
sharing your thoughts and comments with Festive Road. We appreciate your time here.